noticed there was a headline in one of the newspapers that I scan mostly articles. I bet I read one, maybe two articles a day at most, but I scan a lot of headlines. Most of them, frankly, are not worth reading, in my opinion, but that's another conversation another day. But this one headline I thought was kind of interesting, and I thought, well, that's different. I wonder what's behind that. And the headline, in essence, said is that the Federal Department of Transportation is requesting that all of us, when we fly, to dress up a little bit more and to act a little more civilly, a little more respectfully, a little more courteously, because we basically have just become, they didn't say this, but this is me putting the spin on it, we've just become a bunch of animals when we travel. We just don't know how to act nice. They said kind of like, it'd be nice if you kind of maybe said please and thank you to your flight attendants and be a little respectful of the people around, that it's gotten kind of bad and kind of ugly. I've always found the folks at Albany Airport quite good. I fly a good bit. I wouldn't say a crazy lot, but I fly a few times a year. To be honest with you, there's one or two other airports that people are just kind of nasty. And maybe it's because I fly out of Albany in the morning and they're new and fresh, and by the end of the day, the other places, they're dealing with humanity all day, so I try to give them a break as well. But sometimes it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to keep a smile, good attitude myself as well. But it's kind of, the one thing that I take a little, disagreement, whatever, but the article is like, we want to bring travel back to where it's just relaxing and fun. And there's nothing fun and relaxing about cramming onto a plane. I don't know that I hear pilots do that anymore, but years ago they would be like, sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. And I'm like, what is there to enjoy? The little thing of crackers you send, or maybe the little cookies, or the little glass of water. I could have a lot more fun at my house right now. There's a whole lot of places I could do. The whole travel thing is just not much fun, but if you stop and think about it, there's a lot to do to get ready for that one little trip. As soon as you buy tickets for your flight, you've got to already on the other end, you've got to be figuring out where you're going to stay. How are you going to get there? Are you going to rent a car? Are you going to, Uber it? Or you've got family picking you up? And then you got to, before you go, because of the cost of everything, if you're like me, you're going to cram everything you can into a carry-on. So you're kind of like downsizing everything you possibly can. Don't take too much, not too little, but get it in there. Make sure there's no pocket knives or anything that you're going to get sidetracked by TSA. And then, the morning of, you're getting up at ungodly hours, usually what happens to me, and I got to make sure that I'm there early, and you got to either have somebody drop you off, and you got to park, and you cram in, you get your tickets and everything ready, and you wait for forever in that little S-curve line and calculate, and you finally get up to TSA, and you get half undressed, although that's a little bit better. Albany's a little on the front end, thankfully. You don't have to take off quite so much anymore. But remember when the scanners would show body images? They finally have gotten better than that too. And you shove all your stuff through and you get all put back together again. And if you're like me, I got to hit the restroom because I really don't want to get up in the middle of a flight and go to the airplane restroom. That's just not a lot of fun either. And then you finally want to sit down and you hope you're in time before you board, And I've missed more than one flight and connecting because it's just a lot of headache going on. And at the end of the day, the flight is not going to wait for you. The world does not revolve around you. There is a lot to do and a lot to be ready. And if you're not there, ready or not, it is going to leave with or without you. That's kind of what Jesus is reminding us today. The only difference is we don't have the itinerary of the date and the time of when he is returning, but he says the day is coming and you're not going to know when. And that's it. You're either ready or you're not. And he tells us today how we ought to live ready for his return. So look with me at Matthew chapter 24. As I shared with you last week, these couple of chapters, Jesus is trying to get his followers ready for his crucifixion. He's not giving his last instructions. That's kind of, in Matthew we'll hit where he tells us to go make disciples and baptize them and teach them. That's the third thing I didn't mention earlier. But before he is crucified, he's getting them ready to make sure that they don't think this is the very end, because their world's about to be rocked. He's about to be killed on a cross, the last thing the disciples expected, despite his best efforts to get them ready to explain to him this was happening. They still didn't get it. And what he wants us to know is, how do we live ready in the middle of all of that? So read with me, if you would, in Matthew 24, verse 36. Jesus shared all of this in one sitting, but there's so much that we can't do just in one Sunday morning, so we're breaking it up in 2 or 3 weeks. So verse 36, read with me. The Bible says this: "But concerning that day when he's coming back, that day and hour, no one knows." You remember last week, the disciples looked at the temple, that incredible building, and they said, "Look, Jesus, this is amazing." And it was 36 acres, and we talked all about that last week. And Jesus said, "Hey, every one of those stones is going to be taken down." And that happened just 40 years later in most of the apostles' lifetime. And so Jesus is circling back around and saying, nobody's going to know that day and hour. No one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son. My mind kind of gets blown there, because Jesus is God and he's man. And I don't know how the Son of God doesn't know, but the man Jesus didn't know some stuff, but the God Jesus did. And Sean, that sounds like double talk and all kinds of craziness, and you're exactly right, but that's what the Bible says. And so for me, that's good enough, and that's what I believe. But even the Son of Man doesn't know, but the Father only. "For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." First thing I want you to recognize this morning is that nobody knows. No one knows when Jesus is coming back again. If the Son of God doesn't know, I guarantee you there's nobody on this planet that knows when he's coming back. Now, apparently, over the years, some people have taken when Jesus says you won't know the day and the hour, thinking that, well, maybe we can pick the year. But there have been plenty of people that have been wrong in that. We could look at person after person after person as predicts when Jesus is going to come back again. In fact, Albany is kind of a little bit of a historical point. And there was a group. William Miller was a preacher, a pastor, and he had quite a big following in 1844. Sean, that was a long time ago. Yes, it was. That was pre-Civil War. Yes, it was. But it's very interesting. And he taught, that group that he led, and they had a kind of a national following, that Jesus was going to come back on October 22nd, 1844. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were God, which I thankfully am not, I would be like, I'm going to come back any day besides that day. I am sure not coming back on that day. And that group, some people sold off their possessions, quit their jobs, sold their homes. History tells us some climbed up into the mountains to kind of get a head start. They didn't quite have so far to go. I don't know if it's true or not. A little bit of history said some people got overexcited, like they were jumping out of trees, kind of, takeoff practice, I guess, just kind of, that it's coming. And 1844 came and went. And then they had a meeting the next year in Albany, New York, of all places. They called it the Great Disappointment, to figure out, now what do we do when we said he was coming back and he didn't come back? And out of that sprang a group known today as Seventh-day Adventists. There have been all kinds of teachings and people that have picked dates and years and all kinds of things. One that I did not know about that I ran into was that even Isaac Newton got on the middle of this. He picked 2060 as the day that Jesus is coming back. I guess the moral of the story is, if you're going to pick a day, make sure that day is past your life expectancy so you don't ever have to deal with a fallout, But Jesus tells us nobody's going to know the day and the hour. He tells us we'll kind of get a sense of the season, what's going on. And we talked about that, of the completing of the Great Commission, and that things will be wars and rumors of wars. That's just the beginning. Things are going to get a lot worse than what we envision. But make no mistake, God knows the itinerary. I'm convinced he's got it down to the nanosecond of exactly when this is going to happen and when. It is a date set in his mind from all of eternity past, before dates were even being calculated. And I don't know how you calculate a date when a calendar hasn't been invented yet, but I assure you God had no trouble doing that. And so that date is set. Jesus is coming back. It is immovable. And what he's trying to make sure at this point of the story is that we are ready for his return. Not so much climbing trees or mountains or whatever, but how we live our life is what matters in preparation of his return. So the big thing with the whole first piece here is that, guys, we're not going to know. The things we talked about last week was ominous. The abomination of desolation, the horrible things, the wars and rumors of wars and famines and earthquakes and all this stuff. It's just the beginning before all of that coming. And then they're like, that's the warm-up band, and then the real thing is going to hit. And Jesus is following through this whole thing as he's talking to his followers. And what he's telling us now is, if you get it, if we pay attention to the subtle picture, all of this stuff is still going on. But for the individual, he tells us here, there will be people. There will be people where they are grinding and working and living their life, grinding their wheat. Two will be there. It was common, ladies. That was that was the common thing, were for the wives to do the grinding, hard work, and it would take kind of two people turning the stones to grind the grain together. And what Jesus says is, one's going to be taken and one left. There'll be two men in the field working their jobs together, one taken and one left. And commentators disagree about all of that, and I have my thinking as well. But the big top-end story that we want to focus in on, and what Jesus is trying to do, is not give us here in Matthew 24 and 25 the play-by-play of all what we want to know, all the details and the charting and how all that's going to happen. He's just trying to stay a little more higher altitude and just say, folks, this is going to get bad. It's going to get ugly. Some are going to be taken away, and some are going to be left. Some are going to experience judgment, and some are going to experience blessing. And these are people who believe in God, who are religious, he's talking to Jews. The context of this is Jews, but he's talking about the people that kind of get it, people that are looking to God for things in life. And he says, guys, you need to be ready. So in the middle of all of the craziness we talked about last week, life is going to appear relatively normal for people until it's not. Just like it happened when this world flooded. Noah was building year after year, decade after decade. I didn't go back to look and remember how many years and decades it took for him to build that thing. Just an unbelievable amount of work. When you're building a boat big enough for all of those kinds of things, and you do not have power tools. I mean, you don't have anything battery, like no battery sawzalls or, nail guns. You don't even have electricity. Like, you got to go cut the tree down. You don't even have Home Depot or Lowe's to go visit and grab the lumber. Like, son, go out to the pile of 2x4s. No, you got to go make the 2x4, and then you get to do something with the 2x4. It was a long time building that thing. And so day after day, year after year, he worked and his family worked on that thing, all the while as a testimony to the people that something big is coming. And the testimony to us, we don't have Noah around today building a boat. What Jesus is saying, every time there's wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famine, it should be a wake-up call. It's the birth pains, just as a woman going into labor, that something big is coming, and people need to be ready. But it's still going to feel like normal life for people. They're going to get up and go to school. Students are going to be studying for exams. Students are going to be heading into Thanksgiving holidays wondering why in the world they have take-home tests they have to do over the holidays, and how they're going to get a paper done by the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, and they just want to sit and eat some turkey and play video games and be with family or friends. People are going to go to work. They're going to be doing their thing, and all of a sudden Jesus is coming back on that set time, and it's going to be done. And that's it. And nobody knows when this is happening. He wants to make sure that the issue is we won't be able to guess the year. We won't be able to guess the date, the month, the week, the day. And that's kind of the point. He wants us to live ready just because we don't. If we did know the date, we'd all go on vacation for the next 10 years, and we'd get serious about a week before. Hey, you got to get back. Let's get real with our relationship with God, right? That's what we would do. And Jesus is like, no, I'm not going to clue you into that. You need to live every day, like it's the last, and then I'm coming back. Second thing I want you to notice, he's trying not so much to tell us how it's all going to go down in Matthew. There's some things we can learn when we start piecing all of the pieces together, but even then, it's a little, anyone being honest, it's a little murkier than any of us want it to be, of just how everything's going to play out. But he wants us here in Matthew to live a certain way. That's his focus, is not knowing when and how, but it's how do we live. And so what he tells us in verse 44, he says this, he says, who then is faithful? Who's the faithful and wise servant whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? He's telling you and me as followers of Jesus, those of you that have trusted Christ and are saved or born again, have a relationship with him, he's telling us how to live. We are like this faithful servant that he says, I'm coming back and I'm giving you a job to do till then. And that's what I want you to focus on. He said, blessed is that servant in verse 46, whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Hey, you don't know if when I'm coming back, if it's today, if it's tomorrow, the next day, and you're going to be blessed whenever I come back and you're doing your job. That's what supervisors in the company want, right? If they're not around, they want the employees doing their job. That's, as a dad, that's if I told my kids, hey, I need you to do this when I'm gone, I wanted to come back finding them doing this. If they weren't doing this, then it was a significant conversation we were going to have. That's just the way the world works. And it's the same with God in heaven, that he says, guys, I'm coming back, and I'm not telling you what time to expect, and you're going to be blessed servant when you're doing the things that I told you to do while I'm gone. In verse 47, he goes on, truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. Does God own a lot? He does. And I take the Bible as literally at every turn as I can. Sometimes it's very clear the Bible and Jesus means a picture and a metaphor. And I'm careful with that because sometimes if you get onto that whole picture metaphor thing, you just explain everything away. In fact, you can explain away the blood of Jesus Christ. You're saying, oh, it's just a picture that he just died. And, and it's like, no, his blood is what washes away our sins. And so I don't know how the reality of this, if God puts you in charge of all of his possessions, then what about the next guy? Is the next person not in charge of any? I don't know how that works. Maybe his possessions is way more infinite than ours. I don't know. But all I will say is this, is it is super duper awesome when you live faithfully as a follower of Jesus, because when you are in heaven, he not only gives you a job to do, he gives you responsibility and the blessing of serving the King, and somehow heaven is impacted by the way we live here. Not getting into heaven, I'll talk about that in just a minute, but what we do in heaven is impacted by how we live. And he says, you're blessed when you live this way. But, verse 48, if that wicked servant says to himself, my master's delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants, and eats and drinks with the drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Jesus says that we need to live wisely and faithfully. We need to live with a faithfulness in our life and with a wisdom in our life. You see, we should be living in such a way that we're waiting on Jesus to come. waiting on his return doesn't mean that we sit down and look out the window and don't do anything but think about his return. You're not going to be able to do that for very long. Any mom of any toddler knows, like, you just cannot expect you're not going to get a toddler to do it. You're not going to get an adult to do it. You might be able to do that for an hour, maybe two, but I promise you in the middle of that, your brain is wandering all kinds of places, all kinds of things. You just can't stay focused and fixated on that. It's an impossibility. That's not what Jesus is wanting us to do. What he's saying is we ought to live expecting that he's to come, maybe living with an eye, if you will, toward heaven and eternity, whatever, the picture helps you to kind of get your mind wrapped around it. But we ought to have a focus on what we're doing here. That we prepare for there by how we live here. And he says, make sure that you're a good and faithful servant that is taking responsibility among the other servants around you. You see, when you become a follower of Jesus, he expects a level of leadership in your life. He expects you to lead yourself well, but every one of us has influence and impact and responsibilities of how we serve and we provide for the spiritual life and for the life of those around us. You see, he says, this servant, you're blessed when you are faithful and you are living your life in my world, helping my other servants. And you are part of the ministry plan that I have for this whole world. And Jesus really culminates it in Matthew 28 when we get there just after, I think, New Year's or so, we'll get there, that we're to share the gospel and to baptize and to teach everyone to follow him. That's the summation of what he expects out of our lives individually. It's the summation of what he expects out of us as a church. And what he's looking for when he returns is, are we being faithful for all of those things? That's more than just being responsible to our own family or our own household. If you're single, it certainly includes more than just you. But if you are married or you have, a family or kids or however that family goes, it includes them. But it goes far beyond them. On the one hand, he says, treat people well. Not abusing authority. Not beating others. One of the things that I look for when I think about leadership, especially in thinking about pastors and other leaders and church planners that I work with, is I'm looking, do they know how to use authority well? Or do they tend to abuse that authority and that power? And I mean even subtle little things. And Jesus says we have a responsibility to treat people respectfully, but beyond that, providing the food that they need. Making sure that the household is taken care of and serving them responsibly. You see, every follower of Jesus Christ, he gives spiritual gifts to. And it's different for everybody. Some have a gift of mercy, some a gift of hospitality, some of teaching, some of faith, some of giving. But he gives them to everybody. And he says, if you're a follower of mine, are you using your gifts to provide for my family? Are you doing that? So a real question, if we're living with expecting Jesus to come back, is, are you living in a way that you're leveraging the things that God has given you in your life for the blessing of his extended family? That goes far beyond your immediate family. That's his. This is his family, and it even goes beyond that. But are you using your gifts, your resources, your talents, your finances, your time? Are you making sure that his family is provided and cared for? If not, then you're not living expecting Jesus to come back today. Instead, we kind of might be acting more like the teenager sitting on the couch playing video games, convinced that dad's delayed a couple hours and they got an hour at most to mow the lawn, so we're just going to sit and play. And Jesus says, don't do that. Get off the couch and then then you can have some time to play a video game too. It's okay because it's not all work. But he says, be responsible to give of your life. And if you struggle to point to an area of your life where you really are giving beyond yourself regularly, helping God's family know him, come to know him, you're missing the boat, because you're not only, maybe you're not beating the servants. You might say, well, Sean, I'm not beating, I'm not misusing authority. Well, the other option is just get distracted, you know? Because then this guy is like, well, he's just eating and drinking. He's hanging out with the drunkards. He's hanging out with people that are just partying and just kicking back and having a good time, distracted, being irresponsible in life. And so if we're not serving, then something's got us distracted. We've got a different priority than what God gives us. And he says, our life, this whole thing that God is not playing around whatsoever, is like, guys, this is real. The end of this world is coming. I'm not telling you the day, and you do need to get ready. Yeah, it might be a lot of work, and you might have things to go through and get through the gate and security and all of that, but the flight's going to leave, and you've got to be making preparation. The way you make preparation for that is living your life for eternity, helping others with that eternity, and shifting that mindset. It's not so much that we do things completely differently. You still need to go to work and you still need to mow your lawn or do whatever, but it's how you live it in the middle of that. Let me give you an example. This is going to make me sound far better, more spiritual than I really am, because this doesn't happen very much or very often, but it hit me I think it was just one of those God moments. A guy was pointing someone out to me. At the end of the road where I live in the country, and then 3 miles down at the end of the road, I think somewhere back when they redesigned how it kind of intersects with 5S, and it does a wicked S turn. Like it comes straight down, and all of a sudden it hangs a sharp 90 degree, and it goes around this house, and then it deads into 5S. And right in that sharp 90 degree, a house sits there. And I'm not exaggerating. I looked at it this morning. It is 8 feet at best from the road, one side and down the other. The realtors in the room who know location say that is a hard house to sell, and it has been for sale more times than I can tell you. And you can just drive by, and it just, it's run down, not taken care of, because no one's going to put money into it. And there's no curb between me, the road, and where it is. I'd be freaked out. I would be thinking, laying in bed, that a car is going to come right through my bedroom, my bedroom wall. Well, just this past week, I drove home, turned the corner, and caught movement on the little porch. There's a little porch right there. I'm not exaggerating. 6 feet, 8 feet from just like the white line on the side of the road. And I caught movement because I always kind of keep my eye through there. And there was, I presume, a little boy, might have been a little girl, maybe 7, 8 years old, playing on the deck. And it was dark. And I just caught movement and caught the age. And there was nobody around that I could see. And I just kind of, brace, because last thing I want, is a kid running in, the road. And I thought, why is a little kid out there playing by themselves? Truly, somebody might have been there with them. Don't know. Somebody could have been looking out the window, but I just saw a little kid. And my heart kind of broke, because I just know the backstory of the house and the situation, the dynamics and all of it. And I just got a picture of this kid out there all by himself. And I don't know why I thought this, but it hit me. And I just said, Lord, I care about what happens to that kid. I care about that little boy, whether he goes to heaven or not. And my guess is he probably doesn't have a mom or dad who's taking him to church, probably doesn't have anybody telling him about Jesus. There's probably very little going on in his life, but I care. And Lord, if there's something that I could do that would make sense and not be weird, I would be glad to do it. I mean, this is 3 miles from my house. I have no connection. I wouldn't even know the kid if I saw him in daylight. I just saw the height and the shape. But I felt like, I said, Lord, if there's something you want me to do, would you help me to see that and know that? And at the very least, I'm praying for that little boy and his soul. We should all live with that picture of eternity in our mind and our heart. About all the people in our lives every day, guys. Like, the world around us is not what matters. Ultimately, it's eternity. I'm not saying that we all need to sit and get ready for takeoff practice, for Jesus coming back. It's not us sitting and looking out a window. But what he is saying is live your life, but live it in such a way that you're leveraging all the things that he's given to you. Your abilities and your skills and your knowledge and your relationships and your friendships, your spiritual gifts, your finances, your time, your just everything that you own to matter for an eternity, and live investing for his family and future family. Because if you don't, and if you're living for yourself, you're just like these servants that say, it doesn't matter. Life's going on. Jesus isn't coming back. We got plenty of time. It's all right. And Jesus says, don't do that. When you do that, you actually are showing that you really don't know me. If we're going to be really honest here, he's like, that person, when I come back and I find them completely irresponsible and not living for me, he doesn't say this, but this is the implication spiritually, is that person's life shows that they never surrendered to me. And I'm going to cut them up in pieces, which is graphic in itself. And that doesn't end their life, because they're going to be thrown, which is a picture of hell. He doesn't use that word, but that's what this is. And there will be a wailing and a gnashing of teeth in that person's future. So this person all the while was religious, going to church, thought they were a person of faith, believed in God, thought they did a lot of good things, probably knew they did some bad things, but thought they weren't that bad and they could get away with it. God, wouldn't matter that much, wouldn't care that much. And Jesus comes back and he says, no, I'm judging and I see all of that. And your future is now not in heaven. And hell is described as a place where there will be wailing, a deep sorrow, an overwhelming darkness and burden of a soul without any hope, any relief, no peace, no blessing. Vacillating between that, oscillating back and forth between that and anger. Maybe angry at God, maybe angry at the self, as why didn't I do something? Why didn't I respond? Why didn't I? And that's that person's future. So Jesus is saying, guys, this plane is coming and it's wonderful. If you come to know me and you just live for me, I'm going to put you in such responsibilities in heaven, it's awesome. But if you miss it, there's no second flight coming. There's no other opportunity. That's what the next parable, Jesus drives us home in just a couple minutes and I'll be done. He tells a story to drive this point home of how important this is for us to be ready. He says, then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins. 10 young women who have not been married is a picture he's trying to give us. He says, 10 of them who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. It's a wedding. 5 of them were foolish, 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. So the unwise just took whatever oil was left in the lamp. The lamps, don't think Coleman lantern, obviously just little clay lamps with some open oil and a little wick out of it. So you tended not to travel with a lot of oil. So you'd always take a flask, right? So if you needed the light for a long time, you had backup. You just kept pouring it into it. And so as the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. So this is middle of the night. And at midnight, there was a cry, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him. Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. They just had what little was left in it. But the wise answered, saying, since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. You can get oil, go get it. And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. And afterward other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. To understand this, to really get this, weddings are different than ours. It would be days-long affairs, and the groom coming would come pick the bride up, if you will, and there would be a parade, a procession through town, and And it would be quite the fanfare, and it would be, in a community, it would be the big deal, the party, the everything, and then they would go and celebrate and have the wedding. It was just quite a thing. So it would be normal, for the unmarried women to come, and they would be kind of a part of the parade and excitement. And the lamps were there because it might happen at night. No street lights, dark, and so they would be the ones lighting the way, and it would be quite the thing. And Jesus tells us, says, guys, it's going to be like that. I'm going to come, and it is going to be delayed. Every generation till Jesus comes is going to feel like, boy, this is taking a long time. When is this going to come? Is this real? All those things, because it's kind of sifting out where people really are. Do you really follow Jesus? Going to live for him or not? But he is coming. And those people, all of those young women were expecting his coming. That's chilling to me. That means people can say, yeah, I think Jesus is coming. And they're still not ready. These are people going to church. These are people who are praying, who are religious, who believe in God, but they don't have enough oil in their lamps to gain them entrance. It's only those that have the oil. You see, to be ready, those who know Jesus should be serving, living out their faith. And the step before that is what Jesus nails this down with, is the oil needs to be in our lamp, because at the end of the day, when the door gets knocked on, open to us, Jesus looks out the window and says, I don't know who you are. You're not a part of my wedding party. You see, the issue for these ladies is they believed in God, but they never surrendered their life to Jesus as Lord and Savior. They were religious, but there wasn't genuine surrendered faith in their heart and in their life. They believed in God, but there was no surrender. And they weren't ready to enter into eternity. And Jesus tells us something super stark here. He says, once that door is shut, there's no second chances. Once the plane pulls back away from the gate, you're not getting on. So he warns us to make sure we're the wise ones who have surrendered and put our faith in Jesus Christ because he died for us. And if we do that and we really know him, he changes our life so that we do serve other people. That's how this whole thing works. It's not that we do stuff that I was talking about a minute ago, make sure you're busy. It's not that at all. It's when we really know Jesus, he changes our heart. He forgives us of our sin. He adopts us into his family. He gives us his Holy Spirit. He makes us anew. And he gives us a heart for him and for those he loves, and those he loves are people. And so it's kind of a package deal. If you really know Jesus and really surrender by faith to him, you're going to live your life and serve others in some way. Now, the tendency for people is it's like, well, I can't do what you do, Sean. That's okay. You don't need to. But you need to do what God made you for and what you can do. Because there are things you can do that I can't do. There are things that you can do that nobody else in the church can do. And God said, I made you and gave you all of those gifts, abilities, connections, situations, where you are in life, all of that, so that you can help be a servant helping others around you. And he expects us to live out our faith. And what he's telling us here today, gang, is to put our focus here, not on the date when he's coming, but put our focus on our life before him. So we don't ignore eternity. We live for him, but we live in the real world, grinding our wheat, if that's what our job is, working in the field. But we do it in such a way that we're serving the people that he told us to, taking care of his family. So this morning, if you've really never surrendered to Jesus Christ, if you've never taken that step to yield yourself, to cry out to him, admitting your sin, that you don't deserve heaven and you don't deserve him. In fact, you've done everything to not need him. You've just tried to make yourself good enough, but you realize that it's what he did on the cross. And if you've never just simply said, God, I know I'm a sinner, but I'm not going to try to fix my sin myself. I'm going to just trust you to do it. That what you did on the cross for me, it's that simple. It's that hard because nobody wants to give up their pride and their ego. We heard in Jennifer's story earlier, we don't want to bow down. That's the hard part. Yielding ourselves. And some of you need to take that step to yield and say, Jesus, I trust you and I bow down to you. Some of you need to make that commitment to him because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. You're not guaranteed anything besides now. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to let the passage be what it is. Like, you got now, and that's all you got. So as a pastor, as your friend, somebody cares about you and loves you, you need to take care of that now. That where you admit that and yield that to God. And you can do that right where you are, surrendering to him. If you still are a little unclear and want to do that, I would love to talk to you after the service. Would love to do that. But take care of that. If you do know him, Jesus is just sobering us up, making us wise, making us take an investment of our life. Are we living for him? Or are we making our whole purpose of life about what's in front of us? Our homes and our work and our marriages and our families and our situation and our retirement and our just this stuff. Those things he cares about. He wants to answer and work in our life. But that's only a gateway to get something bigger in all of eternity. And so, what are you living for? That's the question he has for those of us who do know Jesus, to kind of invest and take a look at that. And if you're living for him, then you should walk out of here saying, Lord, thank you. I am living with full expectancy of Jesus. Because when you are serving him, he says, that's all I want. I just want to come back and find you doing the stuff you should be doing. And you should live with such a confidence and a joy of your eternal security. And maybe for many of you, if not most of you, that's what you ought to walk out of here with. But whichever of those, respond to what God is talking to you today.